Lule for that backgrounder. We have a number of guests this morning, and it's a full house, as it were, on this year's Workers' Day celebration. First, let's welcome Comrade Nuhu Toro. Nuhu Toro is the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress. We also have with us here in the studios Comrade Benjamin Anthony. Is the National Vice President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC. Comrade Benjamin, we're glad to have you this morning.
A pleasure being here.
Yes.
We also have in the studio Wale Smith Oyendiri. He's the Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Nigeria.
Thank you.
Also seated here in the studio is Comrade Solomon Adebosin. He's the General Secretary, Food, Beverages and Tobacco, Senior Staff Association of Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
And we're expecting to also join us a regular on the program, Comrade Isa Aremu is the DG CEO, Michael Imodu, National Labour Institute. We're expecting him to join us in the course of the conversation to get his views on the May Day celebration and maybe encourage workers. Kinsley.
All right, so to our guests this morning, we say Happy Workers' Day. But let's begin with the National Vice President of the NLC. We've read some of the headlines already, and looks like some typical complaints and growls about the poor conditions of workers. But I'm sure that there could be some silver lining somewhere with respect to the ordeal of workers, not just in Nigeria, but elsewhere around the world. What's your outlook in celebrating this year's May Day?
Thank you very much. As you said, there are a lot of complaints on ground on the issues of workers' problem or welfare. And actually, let's start from the issue of the minimum wage. When you look at it, about 2-3 years ago, the issue of minimum wage, inflation have eroded the whole thing. And when the Nigerian worker take the 30,000 naira, they will discover that he cannot even buy half bag of rice, took more of a bag of rice, and then take care of the family. And when you look at it, even up to now, with let me jump to the new peculiarity allowance that has been introduced. Up to now, that cannot solve the Nigerian workers' problem, because when you add that money, it will be around 42,000 naira as minimum wage, and that cannot be harmonization. And so when you look at the ordeal of the Nigerian worker, from the salary, the transportation, when you come to that, you discover that workers have issues in transporting themselves to and fro work. And the transport fare is also on a high side, and it takes away all what they get in a month. And coming to the working environment, you discover that a lot of things are happening. For example, just get into the Federal Secretariat here. You discover there are workers, but you won't see seats to sit down there. And look at the environment, where they will have to go and ease themselves. You discover that it's in a sorry state. And all this, coupled with training and retraining of the workers, the issue of workers' welfare is something else, and that is why this year you can see the team. We are talking of welfare and social justice to the Nigerian worker, because the Nigerian worker is in a great dilemma.
Okay, you've raised some pertinent questions there that I believe in the course of the program we'll be able to address. Let's bring in Comrade Nuhu Toro, the Secretary General, Trade Union Congress, that's TUC. Year in, year out, we sit here in this studio to talk about Workers' Day with the issues pending that workers are asking for solutions to. most of these issues are still pending. So what kind of message are you giving to the Nigerian worker, and what kind of confidence are you instilling in them that things may change for the better?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to congratulate Nigerian workers and workers around the globe. Indeed, this is our day. Now, to your question, I think it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way traffic, because the same way we are reassuring the workers not to relent, to be hopeful, we also need to prompt the employers and the government to think outside the box, because whether you like it or not, the bottom line is the policy formulators must think outside the box. For instance, my colleague has alluded to the fact that the quantum of the minimum wage is already eroded by high cost of living. So vis-a-vis the current state of the cost of goods and services in the market. So yes, Nigerian workers are resolute, and we would like to assure them that the NLC and the TUC leadership have resolved to not to compromise their welfare, and will do everything possible in the year ahead to ensure that their welfare is protected. Now to the working people and their family, because oftentimes people look at the worker as an individual, but it goes beyond it. The worker has a responsibility, he has a family, so in talking about his welfare, we also have to carry along that of his family. So it's for us to reassure the working people and their family that yes, the future might be bleak, but as workers we have a slogan that the struggle continues. We are indeed resolute, and the struggle must surely continue to ensure that workers' welfare is non-negotiable in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Nuhu Toro, for that comment. Let's bring in Wale Smith Oyerinde, who is Wale Smart Oyerinde, who is the DG of NECA. In your opinion, what are the issues in this year's theme for the celebration of May Day? That's to say, workers' welfare and social justice for Nigerian workers. What does that entail?
Well, thank you once again for having us, and let's join the other stakeholders in saying Happy May Day to workers globally, and also workers especially in Nigeria, for the resilience and contributions they are making to national development. Now, you cannot contextualize workers' rights out of the ecosystem in which we all operate. Someone said not all rights are rights, not all freedoms are free. To the extent to which you look at the environment in which workers are operating, and since workers are not an isolation of themselves, they work within the context of the work environment, then we have to bring in the context of the work environment itself. How hospitable has the environment been, the work environment, the business environment? If the business environment is not favorable, if it's strangulating, then one of the consequential effects will be the issues that we have now, issue of workers' rights, issues of welfare, issues of minimum wage that cannot take workers home. While we affirm our commitment as employers to workers' rights, we affirm our commitment to social justice as being promoted even at the ILO, International Labour Organization, but we feel government must play its part in creating that environment that will enable first businesses to thrive, and then workers' welfare and workers' issues guaranteed. If we don't deal with that macroeconomic issues that will enable businesses to thrive, then we are just scratching the issue on the surface. It's just like the global economy. If the prices of oil is volatile, Nigeria will probably have revenue challenges, and having revenue challenges will affect the quantum and the quality of the kind of services that government will provide. Bringing it down to the local economy, if the fiscal and monetary policy of government is not pro-growth, then it creates serious challenges for organized businesses. And if businesses are not growing, if there is massive corporate japa, as we call it now, because businesses are relocated out of the country, then it creates another dynamics of job losses. It creates another dynamics of not even competitiveness now, The issue remains sustainability now, because you have to be sustainable before you remain competitive. So if we don't deal with those macroeconomic issues at the government level, then we'll be coming here every year talking about the same thing, talking about wages being eroded, talking about inflation eating into the fabrics of the wealth of the society, and it will be a rigmarole. So first for us, government must play its part. Let's deal with those macroeconomic and inherent contradictions that we have currently. If we don't deal with it, the story might just remain the same for a long time.
Indeed. Let's bring in Comrade Solomon Adebosin. He's the General Secretary, Food, Beverages and Tobacco Senior Staff Association. You're a part of the Senior Staff Association. You're not feeling the pinch, I feel.
I can't say that.
Let's get your views.
Can't say that. Thank you once again for having us here. Happy May Day celebration to everyone. As part of the senior staff, that is one reason why we even feel it. Because now you are closer to how decisions are being made, and you are trying to see how things are being done so that you can be able to, you are thinking like the worker and you are thinking like the management, and that brings conflict. Because now you see how decisions are being made, you see the reasons why some things are done, and then you are thinking, how do we provide solution to me? Like what the DG Neka said about the part of government, there's a lot of things that you need the government to do to be able to ensure that lives of workers in general are better in Nigeria. You know, when we talk about minimum wage and all that one, even the social protection that ought to be put in place for workers, so that at the end of the day, if you have access to medical health, that is proper, not just one that just go there because for the sake of there's a clinic here, but then you have to be on one very long queue, and then the kind of things that you come up with, you are not able to get it resolved, that you at the end of the day have to be referred to outside the country. Those are the kind of things that we are talking about, that if those kind of things are in place here, and then our children can have access to education, there's no reason why us should be going on strike and then our children are kept at home. Those are the kind of things that affect workers generally. So apart from the take home and everything, you want to be able to have access to good life, so that when you get to the market, yes, you have access to things and you're able to purchase those things, you're able to get medical care, you're able to ensure that your children have good education. And then housing, in Abuja here we see a lot of housing estates all empty. Why are they empty? Because it is out of the reach of those people that need the houses. So things that government can put in place to say, okay, fine, if you have this kind of housing estates that are empty, why leave them empty for what do you call it, rogues to be able to stay in, when you can easily be able to assign it out to workers to say, hey, we can give you this to workers at subsidized rates. Let it be habitable, because you know any building that is left that's not habitable will start cracking, and before you know it now it will collapse. So those are the kind of things that we.
So in this issue that you're discussing now, yes, has the labor union in any way raised this issue with the federal government?
These are issues that year in, year out we talk about. And then, you know, I like what was said in the speech at the commentary before we started, that we get to hear the speeches every year. And after we get to hear the speeches, we expect that government should not put action into it. And then, before you know it, we don't see anything done. And even when you pressurize and you push and you say, this thing that you promised us to be done, oh, because of some other things, that's why this cannot be done. So, at the end of the day, we find out we have a lot of promises, but we have no action. And that's what we expect government to do. To make a change this time around. Less of promises, just go straight, do it. If you do not even make promises and we see the action that you are doing, we know you are working, but when you make a promise and then you are not doing it, you raise up our hopes, and then at the end of the day you dash it. That's why workers get agitated when they do not see what they expect government to do easily, which are these things that they have promised to do and which they are not seeing on the table. And that's the challenge that we have.
Comrade Adebosin, thank you very much for your intervention. It's not the first time we are hearing it on Good Morning Nigeria. You did say that there are some estates, housing estates in Abuja, that's the Federal Capital Territory, that are unoccupied. Are you suggesting expropriation when you say the government will take it and then allocate it to workers?
What I'm saying is that there should be maybe decision made so that you don't have those kind of things just lying fallow. You cannot build those kind of structures and then leave them empty. So if government will have to subsidize the rates, maybe, okay, fine, the rents that the price, the rent is high, and government wants to come in to say
another subsidy again.
no, wait, it's not a subsidy in that manner, because of the fact that the place was not built by government, and so those who built it will say, this is what I want to, the rate I place on it. So if there are legislation that to be made to say these are the maximum that you can go, and then allow workers to be able to get there, or these are the ways they can pay. If you have to be paying on a monthly basis now instead of paying on a yearly basis, just put things in place to make it easy for people to have access to those kind of structures.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, everybody can be at least have a better
The roof.
Yeah. Go to Ikoyi and you see those high-rise structures, some of which are collapsing on Banana Island, on Gerard Road and elsewhere. The occupancy rate is not 100%. Sometimes the occupancy rate is less than 50%. So would those ones also fall under the kind of suggestion that you're making? I'm not trying to make light of this, but
I understand. When we have shortfall in housing, and yet you have housing estates that have been built in that manner, then what should government do? We cannot continue allowing people to now be able to live under the bridges or to stay in shanties where that is not hygienic. So you want to be able to create a situation, a scenario where people, workers, we are talking about workers now, where workers can have decency. And that's what we are talking about. So government can be able to intervene and then see what can be done in this manner.
all right. Thank you very much, Solomon Adebosi. I want to come back to the National Vice President of the NLC, Comrade Benjamin Anthony. Again, with respect to the theme for this year's celebration, what is the concept of social justice for the Nigerian worker?
Well, thank you very much. Before I get to that, I want to speak a little bit on what my comrade is talking about, this having roof on the head of Nigerian workers. You see, when you look back, sir, you will discover that, like, let me take the Gwarimpa Lugbe estate built by Federal Housing Authority, and there's one in Zuba now. Government intervened in those houses to bring down the cost of those houses. And I believe that if government will now look at it and say, okay, to solve the issue of roof over the Nigerian workers' head, Federal Housing Authority will come up with a program or this thing that will help. So also the Federal Mortgage Bank, to ensure that the Nigerian worker gets a home over his roof. And I think it will solve the problem. Like the Zuba, I want to make an example. When they built, they finished the estate, the federal government took off the price, the cost of infrastructure there, thereby bringing down the cost of the houses. Well, on the issue of social justice, when you analyze or view issue of social justice for the Nigeria or in Nigeria generally, the worker today, as far as we are concerned, is having a lot of problem on issue of social justice. Today, as a worker, you cannot, one of the major social things that you're supposed to enjoy is health. Even with the introduction of NHIS, the Nigerian worker today cannot say, yes, he's enjoying it. When you are sick, you have malaria, you go to hospital, the drugs they are going to give you, those drugs are not strong enough. They will say that this is the kind of drugs that the scheme cover. If you say, okay, I need so drugs, they will say, no, the scheme did not cover them. Is there justice there? No. The scheme was supposed to cover all elements and with drugs that would be able to cure the person or the family. So, one, these things are absent. Two, looking at in the pay, the pay between the Nigerian workers, you will discover that they are being
there's a disparity between,
and the disparity is wide. You take a walk with the NNPC today or CBN as a level 8 officer. They pay you almost 800,000 naira. And go to the ministry or any private sector, you take a job there, they pay you less than 100,000. So when you look at that, where is the justice? And I laughed when the Minister of Finance was saying this a peculiar allowance is harmonization. It is not. And when they were shouting on this harmonization, we also said, look, bring us to the table. Let us see what we are doing, so that every Nigerian worker can enjoy this harmonization. We go to the same market with somebody that takes 800,000 naira a month and you that take 60,000 naira. We go to the same market. And now, where is the justice there? And another thing, look at our political appointees. Look at what they take in a month. All of us seated here, maybe essay to one of the political appointees, they bring our salaries together and allowances. It will not be enough. So you can see the injustice in the distribution of the wealth. And I believe that if we don't look at that and distribute this wealth justly, there will continue to be problem. Year in, year out, we continue to talk. You know, in industrial relations, you must have experts. And when you look at it, we don't have experts that will sit down and analyze the needs of the Nigerian worker and what we are submitting every year in our Mayday, and analyze them and advise the government on this is the way we need to go and take care of these issues that concern the Nigerian worker. So it's a
if I may come in, we have the experts, but telling the truth is the problem here.
Well, I think
yes,
I agree with you.
We do have the experts, but telling the truth to the face of government
yes.
is the problem.
And
now that we'll be talking about minimum wage, it's up for review. I believe
yes,
by
sure.
next year.
Yes.
Are there talks on the table already?
Supposed to be working.
Are there talks on the table already?
No.
On that?
By now, the committee is supposed to be ready, but the government up to today have not come up with the circular or letter to the labor centers that, okay, can you bring in people so that we set up a committee and start talking? And now, by the end of the year, maybe, if they bring in a letter, then it will take another 2 years. And coming to pay, you'll be hearing that without arrears. So it's part of injustice. And there's no patriotic person like the Nigerian worker. Very patriotic.
Very well, Comrade Benjamin, thank you. I want to bring in Wale Smart Oyerinde into the aspects of social justice for the Nigerian worker highlighted by Comrade Benjamin. Last year, you were one of the participants at a 2-day policy dialogue organized by the Michael Imodu Labour Institute. The dialogue took place here in Abuja, and one of the key issues was on the compensation crisis. That is to say, how do you compensate labor for the services that it offers? And then listening to Comrade Benjamin, you can see the broad ramifications that he has brought. For instance, some would say a scandalous disparity in pay between core civil service workers and those who are in some DAs, departments and agencies of government. And the fact that even within the compensation bracket for those who are in the civil service, there are other things that they cannot have access to. You say there's NHRS, but the NHRS doesn't give them quality health care, as it were. So how do we again get attention to be focused on the compensation crisis, a matter that I will raise subsequently, because many see that usually as a trigger for the incessant work stoppages?
Well, I think it's one of the ways that government can borrow a leave from the organized private sector. Because, compensation doesn't exist in isolation of performance. And for you to come up with a compensation structure that is sustainable, that is objective, and then one of the first things you do is to do the job analysis. What exactly does the job entails? And what are the qualifications and criteria of the person that will do the job? So when you do a proper job analysis, it gives you a clear picture or a seemingly clear picture of what this job entails and what are the remunerations or compensation that should be attached to this. If you don't do that at the beginning, then you have created a system that will continually be subjected to the whims and caprices of the person in authority. And that's one of the things that the private sector have done. And that's why you hardly find this issue of disparity in the private sector. When you are coming in, you are interviewed, you are coming at entry position, you know what the degrees are, the entry level position. And as you grow among the ranks, you know where you are going. You can project, to a certain level what your terminal benefit will be like. And I think the government should be able to borrow a leave from the private sector. Also in the private sector, the issue of NHIA, the issue of health insurance, the issue of social services for workers, I mean, to a large extent, within the context of our limitations as private sector, because we also operate in this same economy where we have multiplicity of taxes. At the last count, 2 or 3 years ago, PwC and the World Bank did a research that shows that an average Nigerian business pays close to 60 different taxes, levies, and fees on an annual basis. And coupled with that, we see how government announced 2 days ago the issue of increase in excise duty, increase in new taxes. So within the context of that limitation, the private sector are still being able to do significantly well. So it's something that governments can borrow a leave. We've said several, it is not rocket science. The ILO affirmed, and we also affirmed rightly, that labor is not a commodity. So if a man is working, then he should be paid a commensurate wage. It doesn't have to be the same wage, because the context of the work differs, the context of the risk differs, and the context of the environment in which the worker is working differs. But within those all contexts that I've mentioned, there is still need for equity and justice in your remuneration package, because that is basically the foundation of whether a worker is engaged, whether his worker is productive, and whether a worker is happy. And if you have a worker that is not productive, a worker that is not engaged, a worker that is not happy, then hardly will you maximize even your productive capacity. So we think government can do much if we get our priorities right. If we get our priorities right, and we try as much as possible to build consensus. If there are disparities in the system, he mentioned the issue of calling stakeholders to the table to discuss. I don't know why we have issues with transparency. I really don't know why we have. Sometimes we run the system as if we're in a cult, as if we are running a cult system. It's for the good of everybody, and if the intention is right, if the motive is right, then we should be able to open up the system, call all stakeholders to the negotiating table, and let's have a consensus about this. If I know the system, the business is not working well, if I know the system, business is challenged, and you demand for 10,000 naira increase, and I'm able to call you to the table and say, look, this business is bleeding because of no reason, no fault of ours. So we cannot afford 10,000 naira increase. And I can show you the figures, empirical figures. It is easier, it is most likely that you agree with me that, look, okay, 10,000 we cannot, I know you cannot do it. Okay, let's start with 1,000. Or you can even go to the extent of saying, okay, let's postpone or adjourn the conversation about increases. But the moment I say I want 10,000, then you start coming up with one story, new stories, and I'm seeing your children, I'm seeing them driving new, not Tokumbo cars, new cars. I'm seeing going abroad for holidays, and you come back when it comes to negotiation, or when it comes to issues concerning my health, or when it comes to issues concerning basic welfare, and you say there is revenue shortage. Then I start wondering what exactly is the context of revenue shortage. And that is the reason why we have the problem that we have. We have challenges with transparency, which should not give us any problem. So government can do well to borrow a little from the private sector, that I said within its limitation has been able to do significantly well for Nigerian workers.
Indeed, you've gone very deep into this conversation, and every time these same people say the Nigerian workers are the engine room of government. What happens when you don't oil your engine well? What happens to the input? Solomon, let's get you.
Of course, it's clear. When you don't put the oil in the engine, like we say in the Knocker Palace, the engine will knock. And when the engine knocks, of course, the vehicle can no longer move.
So at what stage is the Nigerian worker now?
At the stage that we are now, before the engine will knock, there's a cracking sound. It is a sound that they can hear now. There's a lot of sound that is going on, and they need to put the oil. You see, the just said a lot of things. The government has a lot to do, and it should not just be speeches. Don't just come and just quote it for us because we know. All this that's happening is not because we know, we are aware. All the figures that they are, in quote, hiding, we know. They were not done in the moon. They were done by people here, we know. So when we come up with issues, or we come up with requests, or we come up with demands, it's not because we're not aware. We are very much aware. But when the government decides to say, irrespective of your demands, irrespective of the way you feel, I do not give a hoot, we are still going to go the way we want to go. That's why you see things happen the way it happens. And at the level that we are now, we are talking about Nigerian workers. It is still easy to manage. But then it comes to the whole of Nigeria, then it becomes difficult to manage. Because Nigerian workers are organized, and so they have a place where they have somebody to listen to, they have directive. But when it comes to the whole of Nigeria now saying no, then it becomes a challenge. We saw some examples in the recent past, and we do not want that to happen again. At that level, it was not anybody who started it. It was just that we are fed up, and we don't want to go that route again. So when a government that is sincere, a government that really cares about the people, will see that and take a signal from it and say, okay, fine, we've seen this has happened in the past, we didn't do well that time, what can we do to mitigate or to ensure that it doesn't happen again? And so it is that time that let's quickly engage the workforce, let's engage the NLC, let's engage the TUC, let's find out what can be done. Let's even look at those who are under the artisans, who are not, like we say, in blue collar. Let's look at all these things and what can we do to make life easier for people, because the essence of governance is to make life easy for the people. You said we want to serve you. Put me in. I want to serve you. And so when you get there, serve me. If I now make this demand of you, I make this request of you, you cannot now look at me and say, how can you say that? You are the one that came saying, I want to serve you. And so if you put yourself up for service, do that service. And that's the only thing we are asking for. If they do the minimum, honestly, Nigerians, the vice president of the NLC said that Nigerian workers are very patriotic. The basic minimum, if government does it, Nigerians are okay. Not everybody wants to be staying in a high-rise building. Not everybody wants to fly in a private jet. But just give me the basics and I'm okay. And once we have those basics, there'll be peace, and to be peace of the graveyard. Because everybody will know that at least whatever the case may be, I'm getting some things done for myself, and I'm living a life that's decent relatively.
Comrade Solomon, thank you for your views. Comrade Nuhu Toro, I want you to also weigh in on the issue of the crisis of compensation that we have with respect to Nigerian workers. But in doing so, let me throw this in. Do Nigerian workers miss the argument by often using as the peg of their agitation minimum wage? Minimum wage. How many workers are pegged at the minimum wage? A worker who started the minimum wage 5 years ago would no longer be on the minimum wage today. In the federal structure, there's nobody who is on the minimum wage because there's no grade level 1. So do workers miss the argument by constantly focusing on minimum wage, 30,000, 30,000. And we have said this in conversations in the past with labor leaders. Minimum wage, 30,000, how much will 30,000 take you? All of us cannot be on minimum wage. If you have worked for a certain number of years, you cannot be, if you are a graduate, you cannot be on minimum wage. If you are a teacher, you cannot be on minimum wage. So to work, in terms of the compensation crisis, do we miss the argument, one, by excessive focus on the minimum wage, and then two, how do we escalate it to some of the points that the other discussants have also raised, namely enhancing the macroeconomic environment that ultimately we make, if we were to go back to it, that minimum wage more meaningful to the person who gets it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I would like to agree with you. Yes, it goes beyond just minimum wage, because even the implementation of the minimum wage, there were a lot of crises of surrounding consequential adjustment, like you've alluded to. Yes, minimum is the basic, it's just the bottom line. And I also agree with you totally that, you see, that is why I opine in my first interaction that there's a need for us to rethink the interaction between employers, labor, and the government. Because oftentimes, if we restrict ourselves to minimum wage, it will now undermine those other critical elements, which brings to question the issue of social justice that is in the front burner. Yes, you have deficient houses. The government has to provide basic needs which are deficient. For instance, electricity is not guaranteed, and that is why most of the investors relocate to Ghana. And again, we have argued several times that God has endowed this country with petroleum products. Why can't we refine locally? Because if you do, that will translate to providing jobs for Nigerian workers and crashing the price in the Nigerian context. We are not supposed to be buying PMS at international rate. It's not fair. It will be a disservice to this nation. And again, and that is why the theme of this year's media is centered around social justice. Are we deficient in social justice? The answer is left for you. My colleagues talked about housing. I'm not sure any of the presenters have a house over their head. It's a basic social necessity that the government...
Which presenters? You're talking to two of us?
Yes, the two of you. I'm not sure you have a house owned by yourself in Abuja.
You are talking about Abuja or where, or if I can afford a house or not?
No, if you have...
I'm not a spring chicken.
If you currently have a house over your roof. Yeah.
So why were you asking which of the presenters? So am I the spring chicken here?
You can use others as
so the Nigerian worker is the spring chicken.
Yes.
Anyway, that is a debate for another day. But,
exactly.
But talking seriously, the government needs to do more. Needs to do more in terms of housing. These are basic necessities. Housing, if a worker does not have a roof over his head, how do you expect the worker to be productive? If there's disparity in wage remuneration, how do you expect the worker to be productive? If the politicians pilfer humongous sums of money, how do you expect the worker to be productive? The irony is these processes of pilfering is well known to Nigerian workers, because you need a worker to do a PV, a payment voucher. You need a worker to take it to the treasurer. You need not necessarily an accomplice, because they could help them perfect it, but I wouldn't agree that they are accomplices, because that is the job title they have taken, and they must perform their basic function to get their wage at the end of the day. So the politicians become ignorant and sometimes think the worker don't know. But I tell you that the workers know from point A to point B and point C and the final payment point. Certainly workers are involved. And these workers are the members of TUC and NLC, and they provide basic information. That is why sometimes you see we give empirical documents about how these monies are pilfered. And they see under their roof that this money are pilfered, and they don't have commensurate thing to take home. And again, it leaves the worker. That is why in most cases you discover that workers are also corrupt. Because if a politician takes humongous sum under my roof, or that I process, or that I checked, certainly it gives room for people not to be sincere, because this wealth belongs to us. So there is a need for a redistribution of this wealth, so that the Nigerian workers that toil to create this wealth are not treated like slaves in their fatherland. There is also a need in moving forward, like I said, that the government should think outside the box, including the labor movement. Yes, over time we have concerted energy on minimum wage, but social justice in this context goes beyond minimum wage. It means guaranteeing quality education for my children. It means providing a roof over my head. It means having 3 square meals. It means being able to go to the hospital and have quality drugs. I can give you an example. Brazil, I studied in Brazil. Brazil's population is far, far more than that of Nigeria. But I tell you, they have a social safety net, a social safety scheme they call Bolsa Familia, in which their citizens are provided for. No matter, irrespective of the ailment, you can access the hospital and get quality medication. That is missing in Nigeria. And when you engage the government, they tell you, you can't compare Nigeria with other countries. Our population is XYZ. But I tell you, the population of Brazil is far, far more than that of Nigeria. And they are still dealing with it. In the 70s, Nigeria and Brazil were at par. They were third nation countries. But today, Brazil has moved ahead because they'll be able to think outside the box. And my pain is Nigerian leaders travel abroad. They see the way things are done abroad. Ordinary medical care or medical checkup, our leaders would prefer to go abroad on a charade. That is not fair. Rather than looking inwards to ensure that our hospitals, our medical facilities are up to date, they prefer to go elsewhere. And that also brings me to the issue of putting round hole in round pegs. Recently, we had negotiations about the labor law review. And one of the functions of social dialogue is ensuring that every critical stakeholder has a say. Yes, the tripartite parties came together. We reviewed the labor law. It was to come, a clean copy was to come back to us. But just to discover that the clean copy has been taken to the Federal Executive Council without the social partners having a know into what really transpired. It also brings to question the issue of having a carpenter to do a surgery. If you have a carpenter to do a surgery, certainly you are bound to have this type of situation. So the Ministry of Labor also needs to be interrogated, because as the ministry responsible for ensuring social justice, they have to be professional. And we want to, and also in providing solution, we want to urge the incoming government to ensure that they scrutinize the person, the man that will be at the helm of affairs at the Ministry of Labor and Employment, because that is the starting point. And when you miss it, like I alluded to my analogy, a carpenter cannot do a surgery. Otherwise, you will have commotion and confusion in the theater.
So are you trying to say that somebody that will, head the labor ministry should be somebody that that feels the pinch?
Exactly. You can't give what you don't have. You need somebody that is from the trade union movement extract, of the social parties extract, to be able to analyze and provide solution and advise government appropriately. I just gave you an example. We had the labor law review. We had suggestions made. How are we sure that those suggestions we made were what was taken to the Federal Executive Council? We have to cry out before it was returned, and now we are going to go back to the drawing board. That is waste of resources and is not acceptable by the trade union movement of Nigeria. So in moving forward, let's have people that are competent, people that understand the ideology of ensuring that welfare of people, of welfare of workers are not negotiable. If we do that, Nigeria will be better off, and the Nigerian workers will have a good time working and will be more productive in this country, Nigeria.
Wow. I like your output on the question that Kingsley asked you. Let me bring in Mr. Benjamin Anthony.
Is it about the spring chicken?
It becomes debatable who is the spring chicken, whether
Benjamin
the
Anthony,
NTA staff
I
or
want
the
to
working
ask you
people.
a question about something that I am involved and I feel it, and that is the job of the essential worker. While everybody is at home, the essential worker is working, still collecting the same salary. We saw what happened during COVID. Other workers were at home for almost 2 years. People like us were here working day in, day out, but nothing was done for essential workers. What is the labor union going to do? We have a new president of the labor. How are you going to look into that to ensure that even if the salary is the same, at least there should be something for the essential worker who comes to work every day, sleeps here, wakes up tomorrow morning, comes back in the evening. It's a roller coaster ride of responsibilities. So what is there for the essential worker?
Well, seriously, as I was sitting down here, I was looking at the two of you, And I was asking myself, these people have been here since morning. I don't know whether they have an extra responsibility allowance that they usually pay them. Actually, before I come to that, I want to also speak about the issue of this minimum wage. I think we should be far from minimum wage. We'll be talking of living wage now.
Yes.
And when the 30,000 came out, I asked a question. I said, what are the indices used in calculating or arriving at that 30,000? You know, in other climes, you have indices on how you arrived at a living wage for workers. Because you have to look at the number of family, house rent, transport, and the clothing of the family and the worker and other things. But here, we just sit down and negotiate on, okay, 50,000. No, I will give you 20,000, as if we are pricing a goat in the market. So I think as we go into the new arrangement, the labor movement and government should look at that. Coming to your question, actually, that is the issue of social injustice we are talking about. As you are here, you are supposed to be paid differently for coming here early.
On a public holiday.
Yes. Even at working day.
Yes.
You are being inconvenienced. Maybe you leave your home at 4:30 to ensure that you are here. So that should be included in your pay, and also the public holidays. I think I will urge all of us, both the labor movement and the government, to look at that in the next negotiation, that essential workers like you must be looked into. I know that doctors are being looked into. They pay them some allowances for coming to theater and all these things. You are supposed to get dressing allowance, everything, including even here, you have to have beverages here to be enjoying yourself. So I think it's a nice question, and the movement is going to take it into consideration.
I'll hold you to that. Next year when you come here, I'm still going to ask you the same
no
question.
problem,
Yes.
no problem.
So we'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation on International Workers' Day will continue. Do stay.
My name is Mary Jolie and I am from Ogun State, but I'm based in Lagos. I've just recently taken a trip to Ibadan, and in returning I decided to take the train. So I said, I'm not so sure, but I'm willing to try.
We thank God that the commencement of this present administration, railway was at a very, very low ebb. And when they came, they took the bull by the horn.
And I'm really happy that I tried. This was probably the most seamless journey I've had since I've been in Nigeria. For example, the train left on time. I was not expecting it to leave on time. 8 a.m., we were on the move. I think it's an amazing alternative to being on the road, especially with just the traffic. It's quite intense, there's insecurity, and it would be amazing to see the government invest a bit more into more trains going into other cities and states. It would really free up the congestion that takes place on the road and leisure type of experience within Nigeria.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. The Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress specially invite the Nigerian workers, the three arms of government, the civil society organizations, and the diplomatic community to the 2023 May Day commemoration with the theme Workers' Rights and Socio-Economic Justice. Chief Guest of Honor, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The May Day is significant in the history of labor movement, when workers come together to celebrate their achievements and reflect on the challenges and chart a course for a better future. Date 1st May 2023. Time 10 a.m. Venue Eagle Square, Abuja. There will be pre-May Day lectures on the 28th April 2023 at 9 a.m. at the Labour House, Central Area, Abuja. Guest lecturer Dr. Sam Amadi, Best University. A people united can never be defeated. Signed, Comrade Joe Ajero, NLC President, and Comrade Festus Osifo, TUC President. There is victory.
REFAN is the umbrella association of the over 12 million Nigerian rice farmers. Through the administration of good and quality extension services, the Nigerian rice farmer has imbibed good agronomic practices, as a result of which the average yield per hectare, which used to be 1 ton as at 2015, is today 5 metric tons. This has resulted to the increase of the national production from 3 million per annum to 9 million tons per annum. As a result of this, today Nigeria is the largest producer of rice in Africa. Since the beginning of 2015, or the beginning of Anko program, Nigeria has officially not imported any rice into the country. All these successes could not have been achieved without the political will of Mr. President.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our 4 guests are still with us here in the studios. And of course, they are articulating issues concerning social justice for the Nigerian worker. Social justice incorporates welfare, it incorporates better management of the macroeconomic situation of the country, as well as, of course, the micro issues relating to workers. I want to bring in Wale Smart Oyerinde one more time. He's the Director General of the Employers Consultative Association, NECA. This is one point, a part of social justice, some would say. Because of the economic situation of the country, high unemployment rates, and the fact of job scarcity, it's been observed that particularly in the private sector, it's become an employer's market where workers are, in some cases, often treated shabbily. Take it or leave it. Organized private sector has probably better responses to pressures to improve the working conditions as well as welfare of workers. But those who are not as organized or with smaller numbers of workers, I just find that they are just only a little above serfdom in the kind of job environment that they work and the kind of pay that they get and the kind of treatment that they get from their employers. How do we address this?
Thank you once again. Let me bring in the perspective of the minimum wage to address the question you just raised. Because the minimum wage basically is out of the context of, is bigger than the context of the civil service. It's bigger than the context of even the private sector. The SMEs are also incorporated. And those workers that are similarly vulnerable or working in businesses that are not as developed, they are also part of those that should benefit from the minimum wage. And via the ILO Convention on Minimum Wage Setting, there is always a tripartite that sets the minimum wage: the labor itself, the employers, and government. And that committee met severally, for months, 4 years ago, to actually arrive at the minimum wage. Probably where we've missed it in the context of the minimum wage is not putting in structures that edges minimum wage against inflation. So that as inflation increases, there should be a process, an automatic process that adjusts the minimum wage. So you don't have to wait till 5 years for us to come back and review, because it will have been hedged progressively against the vagaries of inflation. Now, for us in NECA, one of the things we preach is responsible enterprises. Enterprises that are responsible not only to the workers, that's internal stakeholders, but also responsible to government within the context of meeting your regulatory and statutory obligation in the context of tax and the rest. Now you have employers that might circumstantially or deliberately decide to do otherwise and create a system where workers are not treated as humans. And one of the things we've done also, while preaching the concept of decent work as proposed by the ILO, is also to deepen our engagement with the Ministry of Labour. Because Ministry of Labour have inspectors, they have factory inspectors, and ordinarily those factory inspectors should go around and check businesses, check organizations that are not meeting the minimum standard of health and safety in the workplace. Now, it's a two-edged sword, because NECA, as the umbrella body of employers, we can't know everybody. Now, the responsibility also falls on organized labor. It falls on workers. And that is why we commend what organized labor is doing within the context of education, in workers' education. And I think we need to do more in the context of workers' education, so that if my employer is not treating me well, I should not sit down. The moment I sit down and not complain, I become a conspirator, as you mentioned earlier. I become a co-conspirator in helping the person to get away with blue murder. So if I know my rights, and the context of worker rights doesn't end with somebody protecting your rights, we must be able to stand and defend those rights. So if an employer is not paying minimum wage, there are provisions in the Minimum Wage Act that gives the worker the right to sue, to seek for redress. If the work environment is precarious and is not giving me the opportunity to live as human, there are provisions in our law that give me the right to escalate. If my employer is not paying pension, is not contributing to the Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund that guarantees my safety if I have injury within and the context in between and out of work, I should be able to wait, I should be able to complain and escalate. And those processes are in various legislations. So workers' education, we do a lot. As I said, Nigeria is a big country. Just like you have thousands of borders that you can, smugglers can come in and go out anywhere they like. You have businesses in every nook and cranny of this country. And it will be difficult for us to monitor all. So I will throw it back at organized labor and the need for us to continuously deepen our collaboration and partnership, even with the Ministry of Labour, so that we can consistently and progressively continue to engage, continue to preach the concept of decent work to make sure that everybody aligns. Now, we will not also divorce that, because I mentioned earlier, we will not divorce all these issues within the context of the macroeconomy. I mentioned earlier, when an employer, the grace is for you not to put a notice board that you are starting a business. Even an SME that probably collected a loan from the CBN through the CBN interventions, the moment you start your business, from the loan you have collected, it is expected that you will start business. Even when you have moratorium of 1 or 2 years, from the loan, buying of generator was not probably factored into the loan you've collected. Buying of diesel, probably you made a projection in your business plan that diesel will be 200 naira per liter for your first year. Then 3 months after you collected the loan, diesel become 800 naira. How do you factor in all those? So while we try to promote entrepreneurship and business growth, we still, within the same system, create structures to frustrate that same process. And those are the inherent contradictions that I mentioned earlier. We talk about unemployment rate. Globally, it's accepted that the private sector creates at least 8 or 9 jobs, every job's created. And at the same time, why you say the private sector must create over 1 million jobs in National Development Plan, you still create structures, layers of taxes, layers of regulatory bottlenecks, layers of legislative challenges for the same businesses. So how exactly
that you want to grow.
That you want to grow. And if you don't grow those businesses, how exactly do you want to grow taxes? If you don't grow those businesses, how exactly do you want to generate employment? If you don't grow those businesses, how exactly do we want to develop as a nation?
Why is it that, at least in recent years, we don't tend to hear the voice of labor on the kind of linkages that Wale Smart has just talked about? No. Why? Labor, why don't we have the kind of articulation? We know it looks like it's always on burning issues. Why don't we have this kind of articulation?
We hear that Issa Aremu is available now. I think you'll be able to address this, yes.
We do on issues, we do, because both the NLC and the TUC have research department, and their task basically is to analyze the economy, to analyze the polity. Certainly, we come up with policy analysis that give you on the spot X-ray of what we need to do and how it should be done. And these people, you agree with me, are not people less than professors in their own right that have technical competence to analyze these policies. So I'll differ a little bit to say the trade union movement are not up speed in analyzing the polity or analyzing policies and providing solution. One thing is to analyze policy and the other is for the government to implement or whoever you are advising.
Through advocacy, that's part of it.
True, absolutely.
Analysis, you take it from the table of analysis.
I agree.
And then with advocacy, you ensure implementation.
I agree. Even it becomes, just a moment, it even becomes debatable most times when you enter into genuine understanding with government and employers and they renege. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, you continue to push on.
And that is why we have a slogan that the struggle continues. And that is also part of the reason why we are here.
Absolutely.
And we are resolved. We are desirous. We'll continue to ensure that the struggle continues until victory is certain. We are very hopeful. We can't be cowed. Nigerian workers cannot be cowed.
I think the issue now, and I really want to align with you, the issue, as you mentioned earlier, is for us to think outside the box.
Yes.
For workers and employers, is either a mutually assured success or a mutually assured destruction. If the economy becomes so bad that businesses cannot survive, employers have the option of probably moving to Ghana, moving to Togo, and continue business. Yeah. And the African Continental Free Trade Agreement has given some level of leeway for them to produce and come in. So the people that we lose here is basically the workers, because jobs will be lost. So I think the collaboration and advocacy you mentioned, beyond the research, I think the time is now time for us to actually strengthen those engagements so that we continue to advocate for a hospitable business environment, so that as the wealth is created, it is equitably distributed, so that the workers can grow, the employers can thrive, and government can actually collect the tax that it requires. I think that advocacy and that engagement, we really need to step it up.
Indeed. Well, now we hear that Comrade Issa Aremu, DG CEO, Michael Imodu, National Labour Institute, a regular on Good Morning Nigeria when we're talking about labor issues and the rights of the worker in Nigeria. I'm sure you must have been listening to the conversation this morning in the studio with our vibrant, I will call them co-hosts because we are co-hosting together today. We're all workers. And let's have your take on the theme of today and how labor has done so far for the Nigerian worker. What labor has done so far for the Nigerian worker?
Well, let me do my... Firstly, let me say happy May Day to all our listeners. And I want to also greet all my comrades in the house. You know, I can see Comrade Nuru to the General Secretary of the TUC. I can see my OPTA President. And of course, it looks like us, but today is a comrade. I can see the DG of NECA. I hope I got you right very well. And I mean, what else can I say? You know, beyond the fact that what you are doing now shows that that confirms what workers are already doing to build the nation. I mean, you woke up early this morning doing the good job you've been doing every day, and now we're discussing. You're also workers, like all of us here. The difference is that I thought New and Coach will have also give Juma and Kingsley to have their uniforms to be in good May Day mood. You know, but happy May Day to all of us. And I want to, you know, salute all the key stakeholders in the labor market, namely organized labor, the employers of labor and government, for keeping faith with this date. You know, in the next 2 years now, we'll be marking 50th anniversary of the official May Day, because it started in 1981. It takes cooperation between the employers, government, and organized labor to keep this date. And that shows that Nigeria, in compliance with the best practices and international labor conventions, labor has been seen as critical, partner in development. It was declared by President Shehu Shagari in 1981 and started also, first of all, by PRP government in Kano, and now we've kept faith. But I just want to say quickly that over the years, I think a lot has been made, progress has been made, by the trade union movement. First, we have enforced the right of association, freedom of association, right to collective bargaining. Today, Nigeria has very vibrant labor movement. Hundreds of industrial unions affiliated with two, biggest labor centers, that we have in Africa. First, Nigeria Labour Congress and now TUC. Then through the instrumentality of struggle, I can see we have improved on minimum wage from 1981. We started with 125 naira, even though naira had more value there. But today, through the efforts of organized labor in conjunction with employers, we now have minimum wage raised to 30,000. There's still more struggle to be waged. There have been, you also have vibrant Ministry of Labor, which has been active, the oldest ministry in Nigeria, established in 1932. That tells you that even colonial authorities know that labor is the source of creation of wealth, So I think what we need to do, I think I want to sound more positive, and I agree with my DG that either we work together or we get defeated together, the DG of NECA. But I think I don't want us to have mutually assured destruction. I want us to have mutually assured progress together. And that means that we have to promote more social dialogue, ensure collective bargaining, have respect for agreements. I think Comrade New said as much. Don't go into agreement that you cannot enforce. And let's look at all our labor administration mechanism, collective bargaining. If it fails, you can mediate. There should be conciliation, there should be arbitration. But the last quick point I want to add is that Nigeria has very strong labor policies, on different. So we have policy on employment, we have on child labor, we have on occupational health and safety. You can count them, but the real policy I thought we need now is policy on labor education. And I think labor market is very dynamic. So what we help employers, government, and organized labor is constant education, training and retraining. And this way, Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies can come in very well. We've been running educational programs over the years. In fact, since 2015, we've trained close to almost about 7,000 workforce, but we can do more, so that the idea is that if all of us know what the procedures for hardly collective bargaining, we can minimize some of the avoidable lockouts and avoidable stoppages in the world of work. So labor education is the way to go, as much as possible. There is huge still knowledge gap about what unions are all about on the part of some employers. They try to criminalize unionism. They unfairly treat workers. That is completely wrong. You can't get best productivity performance if the workers are not free and they are not well motivated. That requires education. Then on the part of government officials too, you must be able to see government as partners in progress. Organized law as partners in progress. And that requires knowledge, which Ministry of Labor is already promoting. The organized labor, they've been doing very well, conducting series of programs on their own, but we can also do more. And that's why I'm happy that the two labor centers have been taking advantage of the Labor Institute for regular education. Then the last one is that this May is taking place on the eve of transition to a new government. And I think all the three actors in the labor market, again, organized labor, employers, and government, should quickly work out an arrangement so that the new incoming administration, will be able to promote decent work agenda, should be able to consolidate on the gains we have recorded in the past few years under President Muhammad Buhari, at least regardless of what anybody will say. This government, despite
it looks like, comrade, probably you touched a button or something. The speaker on your device is not detected, so we can't hear you almost immediately. But we are pretty pressed for time now. Earlier in the conversation, I drew attention to the fact that the DG of NECA was one of the participants at a two-day policy dialogue organized by your institute in Abuja sometime late last year with regard to discussing a number of issues, including the crisis of compensation. Which also brings me to a point that I had made some time ago on Good Morning Nigeria. And this has to do with incessant work stoppages. You've touched on that briefly. But look, anyone who observes the labor space in Nigeria today will be concerned about the fact that it appears that what ought to be the last resort often turns out to be the first recourse. At the drop of a hat, the next thing is we are going on strike. We are going on strike. And this is not funny anymore. Of course, you know the best illustration of all the prolonged industrial actions, usually by ASU and others. Is it a matter of more training, or is it a matter of better coordination or attenuation of the anger that workers and labor unions just have against the system? Very quickly, comrade.
Yeah, Kingsley, I hope you are hearing me now. Yeah. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, fantastic. I think that confirms the point I'm raising, that we need to know that we are all, partners in having a sustainable, peaceful industrial environment. Of course, peace must be based on justice for the workers. There will only be dispute in the world of work. As he said, I don't think the first should become the last resort should become the first. First, on the part of the employers, you don't lock out workers. Also, on the part of the organized labor, we don't resort to strike unnecessarily. And this can only be done through regular education, as the case may be. But largely, I still want to say, Kingsley, many unions are taking advantage of this procedure. Many employers have done so. But other unions that are not living up to their expectation will need constant training, constant capacity building, as the case may be. And I can see now that increasingly, whatever the controversy anybody want to say, there is a union now that's emerged from the education sector, and it has come to, that union has come to the institute, for more training, and they were really sure. These are academicians, intellectuals, and they were shocked to discover that labor market is a specialized field. Labor issues
indeed, Comrade Issa Aremu, we've run out of time actually, and we appreciate your input coming, even if it was coming late on the program, but we appreciate your input on the May Day celebration. Comrade Issa Aremu is the DG CEO, Michael Imodu National Labour Institute. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Comrade Wale Smart Onyenude, he's the Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and Comrade Solomon Adebosin, he's the General Secretary, Food, Beverages, and Tobacco and Senior Staff Association of Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us.
Don't see the pinch, our senior staff. We also would love to thank Benjamin Anthony, he's the National Vice President, Nigeria Labour Congress. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you for having us.
And Comrade Nuhu Toro is the Secretary General, Trade Union Congress, TUC. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. The pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you gentlemen on the program.
Same here.
Sports Update is next.